Hey, how we doing? I am Nico from Deltastring. Deltastring experts in Zendesk migrations, automations, integrations, and applications. But today it's a bit tangential to doing Zendesk itself because a lot of people recently have reached out to me who also work in the Zendesk world, but also companies who need Zendesk things doing and they don't necessarily know how it works being a contractor, what contracting is like, and the kind of pros and cons of bringing in a contractor. So let's dive in. What's it like being a contractor? Why should you hire a contractor? When is it the right time to have a contractor? Maybe when is it the wrong time to have a contractor? I'm Nico, this is Deltastring. Let's go. So when I'm talking about contracting, I always start off explaining an example of a contractor we're all very familiar with from the world of cinema. It's kind of a daft example, but if you think about Han Solo in the original Star Wars film, that guy is a contractor, that guy is jaded and experienced. He knows when they come to him and they're saying they need to get to Alderaan, he's thinking about the requirements, he's thinking about what's involved, but also how those requirements are going to change. And, he throws out a quote there, finds that, these people, they are in urgent need of getting a project done and they haven't necessarily thought about the best way to fulfill that project. They're up against a deadline. That's when you need a contractor, when you've got time constraints, when you need to have the thing completed because you have other maybe parts of the business leaning on this, when you have requirements that have maybe changed and become beyond what the existing team are going to be able to implement. That's when you need to go to a contractor, someone who has experience in doing this specific thing at a range of different companies, and they can assess it, look at the timeline, and get this over the line. When you don't want a contractor is when it's something you're going to need to be doing kind of repeatedly because it's going to get very expensive. In that case, you're going to need to have an employee, someone trained up that's going to be internal to do this thing. Or another time you wouldn't want a contractor is when maybe you have budget restrictions and you're not on a time limited thing here. So if you are more sensitive to getting it done under a price level than to getting it done rapidly, then it might not be sensible to bring a contractor in because contractors are going to be expensive, but we're going to bring like super turbocharged experience at getting this specific thing done. And so when Obi-Wan Kenobi and Luke come across Han Solo, they know that he's a guy who does this kind of job, right? He needs to move something one planet to another, no questions asked. He's the guy that takes care of that they've got available. And yeah, they're gonna pay over the odds for that. Luke's going to have to sell his speeder, but they're going to get going, and he understands the problems that are around it and what they need to do to deal with the potential problems that are going to come up. But the key thing here is that they are not so price sensitive, but they are very much time sensitive. They have to get this job done rapidly, right? The next thing we see with Han Solo being a contractor is when they are on the Millennium Falcon and the clients start messing around with their own tools that they like, right? They're waving lightsabers around. Han Solo looks at this, he goes, I've dealt with this sort of gig before, and what we tend to need is guns. Guns are the good way to get this sort of job done. And he's a bit concerned when he sees the clients start to play with their own things. Do we bring our own tooling? We have these bits we use internally. And the client, gets the final say, but they need to listen to the voice of experience in the contractor who comes in and says, yeah, it's great you want to kind of build all your own tools and things, but I thought you had a deadline and I know what works is these things, let's say it's Salto, Zapier, things like that to just get this done, get this working. And you know what, if you want to build your own toys later, that's great. But for now, I'm going to be keeping my gun by my side and you guys have fun with your lightsabers, but I'm going to make sure this job gets over the line. That's a contractor attitude. Later on, they get to where Alderaan is meant to be, and instead there's a load of rubble and subsequently the Death Star, right? And the requirements have changed. The requirements have changed very suddenly based on information that they didn't have, that maybe the client could have foreseen that there was going to be some sort of extra situation, and the contractor needs to be ready to change how they're operating to meet the new problems that they're facing, right? To solve the expectations of the client, even though the job is completely different now, but we're still got to get this done, right? We've still got to solve this problem. And Han Solo doesn't question this. He's a bit edgy and says there better be some serious reward here. But he grabs his gun, gets stuck in, they rescue the princess from the Death Star, and off they go, right? So The key thing for the contractor is to be able to not panic when the requirements completely change, when everything you've worked on gets thrown out for no reason. You can't be sentimental about that. You need to be prepared for clients to, have crazy new ideas, things come in from parts of the business that you have no connection to. You have no idea what's going on over in different teams, different departments. You have no contacts there. And so when they come back and say, look, we now need this project to be completely different and by a different deadline and with these different aspects, right? Then what you've got to do is go, is this feasible? Is there a better way of doing this? But then ultimately you have to solve the problem, right? And yeah, maybe there needs to be some negotiation around, well, this is going to cost you, right? This is going to be more expensive. But the client needs the job done. You're the person they've gone to, and you need to give them a sensible expectation of, can this be achieved? How do we achieve it? How do we achieve it and try not to let the budget go crazy? Well, how can we achieve it on the budget we have? And that's always good when you kind of have capabilities to do that, or maybe you have other connections that you're able to bring in, or companies you've worked with where you've done different things that might be related. And one thing a contractor brings is that they have these other contacts. They have other people they can bring in, whether that's Chewbacca or whether it's Lando down the line. They have other people they've worked with before who they know can deal with this sort of problem. So when the requirements change, tell your contractor, tell them early, and your contractor can maybe say, oh, well, I worked with a payment provider who does this, or I worked with a software vendor that does that. Let me reach out to my person there, and maybe we can find a way of getting this resolved quicker, cheaper, easier, and also make these connections that I think are a really valuable and underrated part of what contractors do, is say, well, actually, I actually know the person that works over here, or I've worked with this company previously, or we've spoken to vendors when I was doing something else. And making those connections is a big part of what I do. So bringing people together who do things that are related but wouldn't necessarily otherwise speak to each other because they're different companies, right? And different companies aren't normally sharing all their secrets and all their toys. We're a bridge to be able to do that in a way that's cost effective, and it can often lead to big things, right? People working together, companies working together, who maybe have mutual interests or can do business together that wouldn't otherwise have been connected. So there's a big asset there in that you don't just get me, but you might get Chewbacca, you might get Lando, you might get other people down the line who are going to be helpful on further projects. When they build another Death Star, this guy can fly the ship, things like that. Han Solo, of course, makes one critical mistake as a contractor, and that is when his part is done, he hangs around, and that won't ever happen in the real world. When your contract comes to an end and you don't actually get to see the payoff, right? In the real world, Han Solo wouldn't be there to see the Death Star get blown up. He'd be off somewhere else running some other gig for some other ragtag band of people with problems, right? And then maybe what typically happens is you run into your old client at a conference somewhere and say, oh, how did that project go? And they go, yeah, it was okay. We had some other challenges down the line, but we got them solved, but what you did was an important piece of the puzzle, what have you. You have a coffee and you say, oh, that was good. Yeah, let me know if there's anything else along those lines, and then what have you. But you don't normally hang around and get the payoff. So if you watch Star Wars and then you just kill it off as kind of they first get in the message like Death Star approaching and you don't see the rest of it, that's what contracting is like. You don't get the payoff of seeing everything working really nicely. You'll get told it at some point, someone will email or they'll have some questions or you'll run into them, but you don't ever get to see the bit at the end, and you definitely ain't gonna be partying on the planet of teddy bears. So is contracting for you? If contracting is for you, you're probably the kind of person that finds it easy yourself to kind of juggle multiple projects. You'll see behind me I've got photography and video gear, I've got some music production gear over there. You can see I've been doing some painting up there, right? And if you can juggle different things in your own life and schedule them and kind of get all these things to completion in sensible time frames and without kind of causing loads of chaos and problems, without having your whole house destroyed, then contracting might well be a good way for you to live. If you find it difficult to say goodbye and to kind of detach yourself from things, if you get quite invested and emotional about things you're working on, then maybe contracting might be quite difficult for you because you don't get that resolution. You come in after the beginning and you will leave before the end. You will not see the message from the princess. You will not see the Death Star blow up. You just get that middle section where you have to run in, all guns blazes, solve all the problems for the client, take all the flack, dish out, what needs to be dished out. You'll be unpopular at times when you have to say to, engineers that work there, well, maybe we need to do things this way, that way, things that they don't want to be doing, but they have brought you in because you are the person who's the expert in the field that you occupy, right? So that's pretty much the life. And should you bring in a contractor? Well, if you're looking to build maybe a long-term relationship, then you need to be looking around for employees. If you're looking to be very careful with money and not so rapid in what you're deploying, then again, a contractor won't necessarily be the right thing for you. If you have specific set goals in mind that are time sensitive and not particularly cash constrained, then a contractor will get that job done most effectively, and it will end up saving you money over time because you'll have the thing rolled out and be able to move on to other things, and your engineers can get going on this and that. And usually things will be packaged up, documented in a very standardized and templated way. And contractors like myself, we're usually able to adapt very rapidly to the different ways different companies work. So if you're watching this and you're thinking, well, our organization is using Zendesk, we have these goals in mind, we need this and that done by this date, maybe we need things to line up with another project, it might be an ERP project, an application release, a new product launch, something like that, and you need new processes, new integrations, new automations, you need to migrate a team, maybe you need an application built to do something kind of real custom, and it's time constrained more than it's budget constrained, then a contractor is going to get that done, and they're probably going to get that done really cost effectively. And you're welcome to reach out, and I can talk you through the specifics of how we operate at Deltastring and maybe build those connections that we all need in business. So I hope that's a good explanation. Enjoy the rest of your day.